Stories, and an independent review of the ABC has found Indigenous and culturally diverse staff have been subjected to racism both within the national broadcaster and by external organisations. Let's go back to journalist and senior cultural advisor for ABC News, Miriam Korowa, who's standing by with Managing Director David Anderson. Miriam.
Hello, thank you, Roz. Hello, welcome. Jinjawala, in the language of my ancestors, the Bundjalung people of the far north coast of New South Wales. Thank you, Managing Director David Anderson, for joining us here on this really momentous occasion. It's really significant that we take the opportunity to step into this new space, as I would like to call it, that's been created today, where we reflect on the legacy of what has been reflected on in this review and the steps that are being outlined in terms of how we move forward as an organisation. So in recognition of that, just acknowledging we're here today on Gadigal country, paying respects to elders past and present, and just respecting the manner in which that we have this conversation. To start off with, David Anderson, for you as Managing Director, coming through this process from 15 months ago when this was announced, what are you reflecting on today as you step through the testimony of some 120 ABC staff who have shared some really deeply painful moments of their experience here working at the ABC?
Thanks, Miriam. Look, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we're meeting today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Look, my reflection on this, Miriam, is that, look, it's an important piece of work that has taken some time to produce, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Terry Janke for the work of her and her colleagues to do it. I'm thankful for the 120 people who have contributed to this as participants. As I reflect on it, it's a disturbing report when you read the experiences of the 120 people that have given their account and the testimonies that exist within this report. My reflection is that I think that certainly within the ABC that every staff member should read it. I think not just read the exec summary, but really read the testimonials that people have taken and bravely taken the time to convey to Dr. Janke that are captured within the report. They show, they're a difficult read, but it shows the perspective of people who have been at the other end of experienced racism, either internally at the ABC or externally from other external individuals or what has been reported elsewhere. What the report says that for all that we've done and all the measures that we've put in place, that we need to do more. And what that report does is calls for us as an organisation, and I call for that too, to come together around listening to the report, listening to the voices that are in the report, to really understanding the effect that this has had, to work together on a better future. And I think that happens through discussion. I think it helps through accepting what's in that report and then looking at the recommendations and then all committing to that's what we're going to do for the future. But the act of some people has been completely unacceptable for certainly those people that have given their testimony. And there is a commitment from me, and I think a commitment from the leadership team and a commitment from the board that exist in those recommendations to do better for the future.
So where does responsibility lie for the instances of racism that have been discussed in this review, but also we can point to those public acknowledgements of behaviour and people feeling that they've been let down by the organisation? Where does the responsibility lie for those failings?
Well, it resides with all of us, resides with me as Managing Director, and for certainly anybody within the organisation who has not acted at times to the extent that they should have. You read through some of those testimonies where you can see that it's described racism as racism, but it is described by Dr. Janke. There's instances of what she would describe as covert racism and overt racism. These all need to be known and understood. They are the responsibility of everybody who sees it to call it out, not just the responsibility of those that it happens to. Responsibility for us for the future with regard to making sure that we are as anti-racist as possible through some of these measures. So some of these measures look to review of the systems and processes we have. Some of the measures are to be anti-racist in nature for the future through an anti-racism campaign as well as anti-racism training. Some of it is training at all levels of the ABC. It's knowledge and awareness. It's bolstering support that we put around people, both to be better coordinated in our response to it, as well as adding resources to that. It is with regard to, as I said, when we're reviewing processes like employment, career progression, as well as the complaint systems we have. A number of actions that we've taken there. So we've hired Mr Chin Tan, the former Australian Race Discrimination Commissioner, to help us with some of that work. As I said, we've appointed, or as you've said, we've appointed a Director of First Nations Strategy to help us, along with the Chief People Officer, lead a team of people to make sure that we can implement all of these recommendations. We commit to evaluating our performance against those recommendations annually over time. And there's a number of other things in there that we also should do, and that is that at the heart of this is storytelling. And one of the recommendations, recommendation 3, does acknowledge that we have statutory obligations to be impartial and accurate, but it also calls for us to clarify and improve our guidance for when it comes to people talking about their personal and lived experience in a way that still satisfies their obligations, but in a way that does our job as the ABC as we reflect the nation back to itself through storytelling.
So in stepping back to this review process and those who have stepped forward to share their experiences, what has that meant for members of the organisation at a position, a leadership position such as yourself, to understand how the ABC has missed the opportunity to handle these sorts of issues until this point, because that is quite a legacy, and I think we need to understand that the healing and truth-telling that this review process now opens up might be quite extensive and have significant impacts for people who haven't already spoken about this.
Yeah, so we signalled yesterday that the report was coming out today, and we've put forward what are our support services for people that people can access. And I think that's important both for yesterday and today, and we've put more resources into that, as we should. What I think the answer to it is actually in reading those testimonials. I think when you're reading the first-hand accounts of people who have felt the way that they do by the actions that have otherwise, whether they were intended or not intended, the consequence was that racism has occurred. It would be in what Dr. Janke would call covert racism, but in those actions, racism is racism, as I said before, how that has marginalised people and belittled people and left them with the feeling that they have. The key is in understanding those situations. And I think that for the 120 people, so both former as well as current employees, I think it's 21 former and 99 current employees who have given those experiences, I think it is important that we all read them. So in unlocking those stories, that helps you understand what sits behind the recommendations themselves. It also goes to the implementation of the responses that we've listed out there. And they will happen over time. It's a multi-year approach to this, but it doesn't mean that you wait to do it. There are things that we're putting into place as of today, and there's those that we're committing to, certainly in the shorter term, developing very quickly so that we can have them adopted and in effect as fast as possible.
Now, you've already signalled that you will be departing the ABC. What confidence do you have that this will be carried out, given that you won't be here to oversee, obviously, a portion of what this work will be in the years to come?
Personally, Miriam, it's important to me to make sure that we put all this in place now before I leave. So I have months before I leave the ABC. It's important to me, it's important to the leadership, it's important to the board of the ABC. So we've all committed to doing this. There are a number of months that I've got to oversee the implementation of this, such that whoever replaces me already has a framework in place, have people in position that are already delivering on these recommendations, such that there is no delay in this happening. And if anything, it's a reason for me to stay longer, not a reason for me to leave earlier. So it's very important to me that we do this. This is day one by releasing the report and releasing a response to those recommendations. And it will take a long time. There is change here that is required over a longer term, but it starts now. And I will say that this change, I think, serves as if I think about the media industry itself, there is a broader question here for the broader media industry about what they do. We're focusing on us at the moment. We're focusing on these recommendations, and it is a path that is a discernible action on what we are doing now to move this forward, to ensure that this doesn't happen again. This racism cannot occur in any workplace, and called it out today in my communication to staff that if people believe that it's okay to behave like this is not the place for them, we will find them and we'll make sure they leave the ABC. It cannot happen. It must stop. It must stop in society and it must stop for the ABC. So together, we can work together towards it. And I think that happens by sitting down with everybody and having sometimes confronting and difficult conversations about what this all means. I think it has to happen at every level of the organisation to understand what the effect of this is, that then informs what your response is for the future.
David Anderson, I have the privilege of being able to sit here with you and have this conversation. What do you say to those people who have given to this review process, who won't have necessarily that opportunity to sit and speak with you? What do you say to them today in light of the experiences that they've shared?
So for the people who have participated in this review, they have my sincere thanks for their courage and bravery to come forward and tell their story. This report is anonymised and will protect that anonymity, and they have my undertaking that we take this incredibly seriously. We are committed to changing the culture of the ABC in a more positive way, to be more inclusive than what we are already, to eliminate racism. And they have that absolute conviction from me, but I know by meeting with my leadership team, and the ABC's leadership team, that they also have that conviction, which is well beyond my tenure. And what we're putting in place here, as I said, is a multi-year framework that is there in response to the good work of Dr. Terry Jenke, who's put this together and put forward the recommendation, but as well as those people who have come forward to give us their testimony.
David Anderson, one of the recommendations was about providing an apology. Is that something that you're prepared to speak to?
Oh, absolutely. So I have today written to all staff and I have expressed that I am deeply sorry to anybody who has experienced racism at the ABC for whenever that is and whenever that's happened. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't happen. And I am sincerely sorry for that experience. And I think that the conviction here is certainly looking at what we are putting in place is to the greatest possible extent. It is not just what we say today, but it's what we do in the future. And I think that what it will take is everybody working together to ensure that all of these things are in place over a longer period of time. And yes, I am truly sorry for what has happened to people in the past.